everyone. Long time since I've made a video, I know. I just haven't really felt up to it given the current state of things in the world and in life. But I am back to make this video, which will be a part 2 to the part 1 that I made regarding anxiety around eating or dysphagia. I have had a lot of people send questions through, and rather than going through and individually answering everyone's questions, I figure it's worth making a video because there are a lot of the same question cropping up and it's easier to address it this way. But I do want to preface before I even get into any of these, 2 things, very, very important. I am not a medical professional in any sense of the word. I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a general practitioner, I am none of these things. The information that you have seen in the previous video is just solely my experience and my opinion. You have been asking me how I have dealt with my own experience with it, and I will divulge that information today, but I must stress that you need to get proper medical advice. This is just an opinion and based on an experience that I've had. And I also need to add that I have been recently diagnosed with a lot of other conditions, some of which are quite rare, that have contributed to my experience. I'm not going to get into those because I don't want to start mass hysteria. Like I say, they're quite rare. Some of them are genetically based, so not have anything to do with any of you guys. Yeah, so which brings me to my second point, that if this in any way is negatively impacting your life, your quality of life, your mental health, your physical health, your nutrition, just anything, you need to seek help. Whether that be if you're under 18 from an adult, just find somebody you trust who will have the means to help you. So like I say, if you're under 18, find an adult who can set up a medical appointment for you. I understand doctors are expensive. Believe me, I know, I go to a lot of them. But there should be somebody in your circle or community that can help you. I'm not going to say that it's free. It's definitely not free. But what I'm going to try and put on the table for you today are some things that you may be able to try at home that don't require a medical professional. It is medical advice given to me, but you again need to understand that this is based on my experience. So yeah, I'm going to tackle today from the vantage point that this is a food-based phobia. So a lot of you have asked what I've done to help. The first thing I did was not even realize I had a problem. I lost weight so quickly from not eating that I didn't even have time to process what was happening. I lost 10 kilos in 3 months, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for somebody who basically does absolutely no exercise and is basically homebound, that's a lot when you're just thinking about what's going into your body. So it took other people to notice before I noticed, which sounds ridiculous, but then it all made sense because I literally couldn't keep my eyes open most of the day. So for me, this all started with eating in a car, which is something I will not do anymore. It's not going to negatively affect my life in any way if I don't eat in a car, so I'm happy to not do that. It gives me peace of mind. That's great. I will say the condition is manageable with the advice that I have been given, but for me, I cannot concretely sit here and tell you that it is 100% gonna go away, because that's not the experience that I've had with it. It may go away for some people, it might not. Again, you may have an underlying cause. This is why you need to seek medical help. So I went back to my hometown of Perth to have a surgical procedure on my chest for another health-related condition. I was told I was not getting this surgery until I had basically eaten back most of that 10 kilos. And the way I was told, this is gonna maybe sound a little bit mean to some people, but I'll try and clear it up. The way I was told was basically, you have an eating disorder. And the first thing that went off in my head was absolutely no, I don't. I reject that idea. I am not anorexic. I am not bulimic. I'm not doing this to myself. That's the mean part, because I understand that anorexia and bulimia have a psychological undertone. I just don't believe that people want to punish themselves for no reason. Anyhow, so I got offended. I shouldn't have. I do have disordered eating. That's exactly what it is. Not in the sense that we in society automatically jump to those two conditions, but in the sense that it was not a normal pattern of eating, which is disordered eating. So I was recommended to see a dietitian with a psychological background. So it was kind of like therapy and nutrition advice all in one, which was good because obviously anxiety is a psychological thing. My food was tied to an anxiety, so that's what I did. Now, I'm gonna say that it took a long time to get over this. This is not for the faint of heart. You have to want it. I was threatened basically that if I did not follow this program, which spanned over 20 weeks, I would be having a feeding tube placed. And for me, that was like, no. Enough is happening to my body surgically this year that I'm drawing the line at that. So I tried so hard to avoid that. My dietitian had me eating 6 small meals a day, starting with textures that I could stomach. So basically smoothies, anything blended. I would make smoothies with blueberries in them, and then I would strain the smoothie because even the tiniest little seed would freak me out. And I did that for a long time, but the first few months of this process was just calorie building. I was so nutrient deficient, I was malnourished, everything was freaking out, I was losing feeling in my limbs, it was ridiculous. So there was a lot of high calorie foods, like ice cream I could eat by the bucket load. There was no deterrent on ice cream or on chocolate or whatever. I mean, in the long run, really bad for your teeth, but yeah, as long as I ate 6 meals a day, which obviously started out small because I'd literally shrunk my stomach to nothing, and then we built on that. So maybe the first 2 months I could only stomach a half a cup of something 3 times in those meal times, and the rest would be like me picking at like 2 biscuits and a cup of coffee and whatever. And then in the next few months it might be, okay, that half cup has to become 1 cup, and then that 1 cup becomes 1.5, 2 cups, whatever, until you're basically back on track. And they start introducing new textures every week as well. You might not be able to stomach it for the first few weeks. There was a lot of regurgitation and things like that on my part, but you have to have the mentality that you want to get better, which I'm sure most of you have because you explained to me that it's ruining your life. So yeah, have to stick with it. That was part 1. Part 2 was identifying why I was afraid of it and why it was completely irrational. So when I would eat, I would be hyper focused with what was in my mouth, to the point where I would start thinking I'm choking before anything had even been in my mouth, which was ridiculous. So I had to own up to the fact that that was absolutely a ridiculous thought. It was not helpful in any way. And then what I was told to do, because I know with this a lot of people rely on drinking while they eat to be able to bear it. You have to challenge the anxiety. So when I eat now, I do not drink until I have finished my plate of food. That is because I have to sit with how uncomfortable it is in my mouth until I desensitize myself and create a new neural pathway in my brain that says this will not kill you. This is fine. It's uncomfortable, but it's fine. You have to train yourself again, basically, to eat normally. I still slip up sometimes, but nowhere near as many times as I used to. I can sit and have a meal now and not even think about it. The typical distractions like watching television and things didn't work for me. I just basically had to sit there and challenge myself. I work really well if I'm being challenged or I have a goal that is attainable. So I would sit there and be like, that glass of water is not happening until I've eaten. And I would eat and get through it and sit there for 10 minutes afterwards, and then I would reward myself with the glass of water. Part 2 was making myself a list of food that was acceptable and a list of food that wasn't acceptable. And this was really weird for me because it triggered something else. I had been raised my whole life just to eat what was given to me, and no one had ever asked me what I like to eat before. So it was just a standard list of like fruits, vegetables, meat, whatever. But someone actually asked me, what do you want to eat? And that sounds so stupid, but like I'd been eating carrots and corn my whole life, and I really friggin' hated carrots and corn. I'm just eating it because people were giving it to me. So I don't eat carrots and corn anymore. I mean, that's a lie. I still eat carrots if they're in stuff, but I won't go out of my way to eat something I don't like. And I think doing that exercise, as trivial as it sounded, made me realize I was in control of what was going to happen with my food. So it kind of empowered me a little bit, and it sort of shrunk the anxiety because it was me. I was in control of what I ate. I was in control of how it was textured. I was in control of the whole experience, when I would drink, when I wouldn't drink. And that empowerment gave me a lot more confidence to be able to be like, no, you're right, this is completely irrational. It's not going to happen. Though, I will say, like I say, it takes a long time to get over, but you also have to rule out any underlying conditions. When I first started having this happen, they made sure I did not have reflux in any way, shape or form, including silent reflux. Silent reflux is a big thing that causes this condition, which is why I stress to go see a doctor, because there may be an underlying cause for you. We found out for me that my chest deformity was actually crushing my esophagus, so it was a lot harder for me to eat food because I didn't have enough space to actually get the food down to my stomach. Once I had the procedure, honestly, I was eating like there was no tomorrow. I still had moist food for a long time, and there's still food, like I say, I don't really want to eat anymore, but I make sure that the food that I do eat is very high in protein. That's a big thing, and I'm getting enough calories during the day, even if that means snacking a lot. So I kept that 6 meal a day plan. I would have alarms in my phone for every 3 hours, so I would do 6 to 9 every day, every 3 hours, and I ate 6 times a day for around 8 months. After that, I felt comfortable enough to go back to a normal routine and have no real issues with it. But like I said, it does flare up from time to time. You just have to put in place something that will work for you. For me, it's a challenge. For you, it might be practicing mindfulness and meditation, or having some sort of mantra to understand that this is just an insignificant part of your brain trying to get in the way. Heaps of people choke all the time. Not always a life-threatening situation, particularly with food. And that was the other thing. I come from a science background in terms of my knowledge base, so it made it more annoying for me because I absolutely understand the processes of the body, and I was like, it's never gonna happen. And that's something I also addressed in therapy. We would role play scenarios where if you did choke, what would you do? How would you do it? How much time would you have? And she's like, what are the chances that should you choke on something, given your current state where you literally chew everything until it's non-existent anymore, what would that even mean? It wouldn't be big enough to obstruct anything. Yeah, it might be uncomfortable. Yeah, you might need to go to the hospital and get something sucked out, but you wouldn't die. And I think when I cemented that idea into my head, I was like, yeah, actually, no, she's right. As long as I chew my food, nothing bad really is gonna happen before I can have it sorted. So that was another thing. And then again, there would be challenges in therapy as well, where she would bring in like lollies and be like, I need you to have one, and it would create anxiety, and we'd literally have like little little stalemates for good 15 minutes before I just cave in and do it, and then it'd be like, see, nothing happened. And that's the thing, you just have to keep reinforcing nothing's gonna happen. I know a lot of questions have also asked, how long does it take? I honestly can't answer that for you. It's like I say, it's not over completely for me now. There are still things that I will avoid doing, but I make sure that the things that I avoid are like minor things in my life, that they will not impact on the grand scheme of things. They won't put my health into any sort of question. It won't mentally hurt me to avoid that. It won't nutritionally hurt me to avoid anything. So it's like someone not liking the color blue and then not wearing blue. It doesn't negatively influence their life. It's little things. I still won't drink when I eat. I find it very helpful. It's an encouraging tool because every time I eat, I'm like, ha, I beat you. So yeah, I can't give you a time frame, but you have to want to fix it. This is something that you need to address with the standing point that you are bigger than this, you will get over this, you don't want to be a slave to this anymore. If you go into this as a victim, it's going to be impossible. I would highly recommend, if you're going down the route of seeing medical professionals, my top 3 would be obviously your general practitioner, but other than that would be a psychologist, a dietitian, and a speech therapist, particularly if you're somebody who has problem with textures. Nobody thinks about that, but speech pathologists help you control where your tongue is in your mouth, not only when you are speaking, but when you are eating and swallowing. And if there is an underlying problem with the way you're maneuvering the muscles in your mouth, they will be able to diagnose that and help you through that. That's the only reason I bring that up, because when I was having my surgery, while I was in the hospital for 7 days, I was approached by the speech pathologist there, who absolutely was a godsend, worked with my dietitian, made sure that the hospital staff were on board with what kind of textures I could tolerate and what I couldn't at that point. And yeah, just very helpful. Checked my muscle tone in my mouth and my throat, made sure nothing was off. So yeah, I hope that answers some of your questions. I'm sorry it's not a one-shoe-fits-all approach for everybody regarding this. I'm happy to answer more questions. I will link the email address in the description section below, as well as a link back to the first video if you need like a refresher of what's happening. Again, please, please, please seek medical advice, because for most of you, it will just be this. For some of you, there will be an underlying cause, and there's no way you're going to be able to treat it correctly until you are able to identify that. Other than that, I love you all very much. I really, really, really hope to hear some success stories from a lot of you guys that have contacted me regarding the first video. That will now be titled part 1 and this part 2, so they're easier to find, but I should pop each of them in the descriptions on the other, if that makes sense. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again soon. I don't make any promises because this is freaking me out. And yeah, stay safe, stay inside, stay healthy, and just be nice to everybody. Okay, see ya.